Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Opposite the Monitor, and today we're going to get into some more Capcom news and Resident Evil remakes. And like I assumed and already kind of knew from last video, because I mentioned this last video, if you guys tuned in, make sure if you guys enjoy the content, make sure you like that video. Yeah, Capcom is making more Resident Evil remakes. I knew there was a report before saying that, there may not be any coming in 2024. That could still very well be possible. But I don't think that's probable, because I know that the Resident Evil remakes make a lot of money for Capcom. I mean, so much so to the point now that it's just being, it's being recommended as Game of the Year, for the Game Awards this year. They're fun games. They're great games. They're great. I'm always going to be a supporter of remakes over remasters. I know they may be controversial for some people just like having the remasters, but in me personally, I'd rather just recreate those games for modern day audiences, instead of just doing like a high res remaster, or just re-release those games in their original state and maybe change a few things here and there to, make the configurations more modern for, gamers today and the hardware that they have. I kind of assumed this, man, but yeah, going on, Capcom confirms more Resident Evil remakes on the way. They asked the question, but what's next? I mean, obvious Resident Evil 5, but so they go on to say that when asked if Capcom wants to keep remaking games from the series, Ampo replied, yes, we've released 3 remakes so far and they have all been received very well. Since it allows a modern audience to play these games, it is something I am happy to do as someone that loves these older games, and we want to continue doing more. Yes, I want you to do more. Please do more Resident Evil remakes. I mean, not even just Resident Evil remakes. Do more remakes of games that you already that you have. You know what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure Capcom still has the rights and licenses for Dino Crisis. I would definitely like to see. I mean, granted, that's kind of like some people would just be like, oh, that's just Resident Evil with dinosaurs. But I mean, Dino Crisis was a cult classic, and it had its own it had its own type of I want to say lane that it existed in outside of Resident Evil. You know what I'm saying? Granted, I could definitely see like Dino Crisis existing in a world of Resident Evil. Like I can, or in a universe of Resident Evil. I can see that coexisting in the same universe, and stuff like that. That would actually be pretty dope if I don't know if Capcom could actually pull that off though. Like, I don't know if Capcom could pull off something similar to like, like Control and Alan Wake. Granted, because they're not so crazy far apart from each other within that universe. That's kind of like going like a stretch. But I mean, then again, it's like there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens in Resident Evil. So it's like it would be pretty dope to see if they can pull that off in a video game where you kind of get an inclination within Resident Evil that's canon that Dino Crisis exists in this universe, and like, how are they tied? Who's been working with this? Is it the same type of, did Umbrella purchase a different, do they have a subsidiary or anything like that? Is it another business that is also associated with the corporation that was, developing these dinosaurs and all, with these dinosaurs and Dino Crisis and all that stuff. So it's like, that would be pretty interesting. I love to see that. But I mean, of course, they're doing more Resident Evil remakes, man. It's for me, it was just a given the fact that I'm very much so a Resident Evil fan. I love Resident Evil. Like, it's legit part of my childhood. And I'm going to forever always play Resident Evil games. And especially since Capcom has delivered on not only just these remakes, but the mainline games as well. Like, it's just hard to kind of deny, it's just hard to kind of fathom them not doing the remakes anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's going to come to a point in time where those remakes do have to end, because the remakes are going to actually catch up with the mainline stuff. And I mean, you don't want to remake Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Like, you don't want to do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think you definitely want to kind of like cut off, me personally, I think you want to cut off at Resident Evil 6. I think Resident Evil 6 actually needs a remake because that game was the worst game. I want to say that game is probably the most poorly received Resident Evil game made, in my opinion. So I mean, like, if you can do a remake of that game and it makes some major changes to that game, and like, me personally, I think get rid of the whole, like, the way in which the game is structured, where I understand you want to try to have, increase replayability, by playing as like each different character and then each one of their storylines intertwine with each other. But I think there's a better way to kind of tell that story without having to do that. And one of the ways that I see that being really good, and they can actually take this from Remedy, is the way in which Alan Wake handles both of their protagonists. The way in which Remedy handled Alan Wake and both of their both of the protagonists that they had actually worked really well, not only for the story but gameplay wise too. And it allowed you to be able to experience the strengths of two different characters, their strengths and weaknesses. And it allowed you to be able to flesh out those characters as well. So I think that if you're going to do Resident Evil 6, I would love to see them completely do away with what the original Resident Evil 6 was and then recreate something new, where it's like I'm not having to just play one story and then I'm going back into the game and then, booting up a whole new story or something like that. Either, like, have it to where it's like I'm playing as one character, where you're controlling the back and forth, where I'm playing as one character the entire time. And then you control when we switch to a new character and you start telling that story and you start piecing things together, maybe add new elements, add new different narrative pieces to the game that maybe wasn't there before in the original Resident Evil 6 game, maybe change certain things about certain characters. I mean, of course you're going to change, like, the face models of certain, you want to kind of like keep things still in line with the original game because it has to be a remake. But I think a remake would actually do Resident Evil 6 some justice and actually put that game in a better light, in my opinion. I don't know how, I mean, a lot of people don't really like Resident Evil 6. I'm not gonna say a lot of people don't really like Resident Evil 6, but what I will say is that a lot of people think Resident Evil 6 is the weakest game out of the Resident Evil catalog, in my opinion. From what I've just seen, just like, Reddit, or like even just at the time in which the game came out, it wasn't well received. So, I think doing a remake in that vein and, taking some pointers from Remedy Entertainment and how they were able to kind of like, craft and architect the stories of two protagonists within one game, and then eventually just giving you the option to interchange between both of those, or not interchange, but to jump from each character's point of view, not simultaneously, but like just going into a specific area, jumping to Alan and then leaving, doing the same thing and jumping to the other protagonist. So it's kind of like it works in that vein if you do it that way. I know, given the fact that, and then me personally, I was just like, I think, Ada Wong was, I think, the third character. I mean, they always throw Ada Wong into a DLC. I mean, why change it up? Just throw Ada Wong as a DLC in that one too. But I think they had all three. So you played as Chris, Leon, and then you played as Wesker's son. I think that I think for me, look, it is a nice point of view, I would say, to play as like Wesker's son for Resident Evil 6. And I'm doing quotations, you can't see that, but I don't think that part of the story is like needed. I think if for me personally, I could do without that portion of the story. I think just having Chris Redfield, having the Chris story and the Leon story is enough. And then having him as like having that third character as like a passerby type of cameo character could probably work a lot better. And not necessarily having to have 3 protagonists like that in a game. Or like kind of like, you know, 2 protagonists and 1 kind of like anti-hero, I guess, or whatever. I always thought that portion of the game was just so left field. And it felt kind of out of place when playing that portion of the story. But moving on though, they have some more information. So what they go on to say that what game we will remake in the future is something that we would like to announce in the future. So please look forward to it. When developing a new game, there is no way to know that it will be received well by the players, which makes it difficult. And this is kind of like a response to player feedback. In the case of a remake, there are already players that have played the original, which I think can be seen as an advantage. We are very grateful to users that are vocal about their opinion. It allows us to develop with the player's opinion with the player's opinion in mind. For example, if this is how the players feel, then maybe we can make it like this. I think this is one of the reasons why our remakes are so well received. And I mean, I would agree. Taking in player feedback always helps. It'll always help. And it's not just like some, you know, what a lot of people like, I guess like for entertainment purposes, like to just be like, you know, like fan approval, I guess, or whatever like that. And they just kind of like go against what fans voice their opinions on and then try to come up with some, you know, thing in their mind that, you know, and they just think that, oh, this is the most like artistic, nuanced thing that no one has ever attempted before. And it's just all like egocentric. Instead of just making a good product that people like and will buy. But, you know, I mean, of course, it's, you know, they've done well. I don't think you need to really change up the formula. You know, don't fix what's not broken. You know what I'm saying? But I do think, though, that could definitely play a major role when you get to Resident Evil 6. When you get to Resident Evil 6, having player, that probably may be the most critical and crucial point for Capcom to think about when developing Resident Evil 6. I think taking in player feedback to fix some of the stuff that was, some of the design, some of the choices that was made, the story elements and plot choices that were made in Resident Evil 6, and make some drastic changes to that. And in my opinion, I mean, why not take from, you know, a game I consider that, you know, game of the year for me. Oh, that one of the game of the year contenders for me is Alan Wake. You know, I mean, besides Baldur's Gate 3, but like Alan Wake 2 is definitely like a phenomenal game. And the way Remedy handled that title, you know, is flawless in my opinion. So I mean, like, it could definitely take some pointers, definitely take some like things from that particular game. But let me know what you guys think, man. Like you know, like, I mean, we all know what remake is coming next. But, you know, do you think they should make critical changes to Resident Evil 6? Or did you like Resident Evil 6? You know, did you like the way it was laid out, I guess? Me personally, I didn't. I think it's some major changes. That game could do some changes, you know. But moving on, though, we got some more information. And some more Capcom information. Dragon Dogma 2 will be the first $70 Capcom title. Also includes Denuvo. The $70 part, I'm not surprised about. I actually didn't pick this particular article for that. I picked it because of Denuvo, and Denuvo's always been a problem. But from, you know, and they mentioned this in this article too, that, you know, Capcom typically like removes Denuvo after a while. So all you PC players, I would delay the purchase. Delay the purchase if you don't want Denuvo and you've had Denuvo before and Denuvo has, you know, not done right by you before, you know what your rig can handle and even just what your rig can handle, but just like, you know, the performance hit that Denuvo puts on games. PC players, don't even buy it day one. You know what I'm saying? Or if you're like me, like I pre-order games and, you know, if there's a bunch of games coming out that I want that I don't like, that I know I'm not going to have enough time to just play and stuff like that. The ones that I pre-order, for instance, like this, which I'm most likely just going to get on PlayStation, but I just don't even play them. I have them on the back end and then I focus on another game for a while. And then what ends up happening is that, oh, okay, you hear about it in the news or, Reddit or whatever forum, you hear about it. And it's like, okay, Capcom removes Denuvo from, or Bethesda removes Denuvo from Doom or whatever like that, or, whatever. And it's be like, okay, cool. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, all right, now I can jump into it now. So, and if you want to get in on those pre-order bonuses, I guess, or if you just got simple FOMO, which I advocate against, but they go on to say that as one of the biggest titles for the Japanese publisher, this title is making more than a few changes. Capcom is finally ready to transition to $70 games, and the studio has picked Dragon's Dogma 2 for this transition. Yeah, I mean, it was bound to happen. I'm not surprised at all. It was going to happen. The industry is moving in the $7 price tag. I completely disagree with it. I don't think $70 is warranted, especially with the developer. They've stated before that games were too cheap, and I'm just like, or games were too low priced, and I'm just like, okay, defend your stance on that. You mentioned the cost of development, but that means so much that you need to give details. Like that is the equivalent of like, you renting a place and they just increase your rent just because they say this is what the market is, and then they don't come into your place and renovate anything in your apartment. You know what I'm saying? They don't come in, they don't update anything. They don't justify the $200 a month, which if you equate that, over 12 months, if you're renting for like 12 months or whatever like that, that's clearly over like $10,000 additionally for a year and stuff like that. It's like, you could at least add a new refrigerator. Can I get a touchscreen refrigerator in here or something? Like, can you add something to justify this shit? Or you just gonna oh, nope, cost of development, that's why $70. Take it or leave it. You know what I'm saying? I'm just like, and it becomes kind of ridiculous and asinine to just like understand that you accept this particular, type of stance without any sort of explanation. You know what I'm saying? Or not explanation, not necessarily explanation, justification. I don't think the cost of development, quotations, the cost of development is a worthy enough justification to be like, oh, $70. This is going to be $70. You know what I'm saying? So my thing is like, I mean, it's gotten to the point of where it's crossed over into PC now. PC used to be the safe haven from $70 games. It used to only just be a console thing. Now it's like, and then, it's gotten to the point now where people just simply defend $70 games. And I'm just like, okay, what is your stance on this? What is the justification? What new thing have they added into this particular game to justify $70? From what I can see, obviously it's been updated graphically. And I'm not saying this game in particular, but there's a bunch of other games that don't justify the $70 price tag. Call of Duty could be one of them. And it's just like, there's no real justification for me. And I can give an example. A good justification for a $70 increase would be if the studio developed an entirely new engine to run this game on. If the studio developed an entirely new engine to run this particular game on, which, for Capcom, they're developing the REX engine moving forward. I don't think Dragon's Dogma is running on the REX engine. If I had to guess, it's probably running on some sort of I don't want to make any assumptions. I need to look more into it. But if I had to guess, it's probably running on some variation of the RE engine. Just because of graphically how it looks. It's definitely not the RE engine. I don't think it can handle all of that RPG elements that's going into it with the AI companions and all that stuff. But, obviously it's more upgraded than the original, but that's not accounting for anything really. Like that game is like 13, 14 years old or something like that. Dragon's Dogma, the original's old. So it's like, yeah, there needs to be some type of justification other than just like the cost of development, but they go on to say that following the showcase, Denuvo DRM has also been confirmed for Dragon's Dogma 2. This is typically an unpopular choice. Yes, we all know that. But Capcom is one of the many studios that don't shy away from using the DRM. I don't understand why when there's multiple other DRMs that don't affect performance on games. And I've talked about this previously in another video of mine if you guys want to go check that out. But they're going to say that still the Japanese publisher has been known to remove the DRM after the initial launch excitement wears off. Yeah, so I mean, that's why I say that, you know, knowing this information, do with it what you will, but I recommend waiting until Denuvo is removed. If Denuvo is something that you are highly against, and you don't want to deal with it, I mean, you could buy the game and just hold on to it and play something else for a while, you know, and then wait until they remove it. Or you can just, you know, if you just want to support the game, you can do that. Or if you just don't want to deal with it at all, and, you know, there's more games coming out. I think this game is coming out in March. So there's going to be more games coming out around this time anyways. So it's like you can play something else in the meantime until they remove it. You know, and that's kind of like the process in which I tend to kind of go, if there's a game that I'm excited for from a publisher that has been consistent, I will pre-order the game and not play it until Denuvo has been removed. But you know, if that's something you don't want to do, then I just recommend don't even buying it until they remove it. You know, and then once they start seeing those sales dip, you know, from people not pre-ordering the game or people not buying the game day one and stuff like that, or when they start seeing like, hey, you know, a lot of people are just buying this game on, I mean, for those who have multiple platforms, or those who have PC and Xbox or PC and PlayStation or whatever like that, you know, if you can make a stance and show them like, hey, I'm just going to buy this on PlayStation. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it doesn't necessarily affect consoles like that, because consoles are very much so a controlled environment, and that's the whole purpose of DRM. The consoles are very much so a controlled environment, so you don't have like pirating and then like it's hard to do pirating on console games versus PC. You know, so it's, you know, buy those on the console. So when you start seeing DRM games, if they're a multi-platform game, I just tend to buy it on console. So then that way it's like, hey, I don't have to worry about Denuvo like that on PlayStation. I don't have to worry about it on console, on Xbox neither. But you know, for some people, they don't have multiple platforms. So it's like, those are multiple alternatives. Those are multiple routes that you could possibly take. You know what I'm saying? In my opinion. But you know, and this is, you know, the other additional part that I wanted to just highlight, that he goes on to say that not long ago, Sugimoto from Capcom stated that he felt game prices were too low. Of course, you're going to feel like game price is too low. Game price increases directly affect your salary or your bonus. So typically bonus. So he goes on to explain that the cost of development has grown much higher, but the price of the software has stayed consistent. I mean, explain that. Explain the cost of development. Like I said, that's the equivalent of the free market. You know what I'm saying? You can sit back and say, oh, it's the free market. Okay, how does that, you know what I'm saying? Like, how does that affect me directly as the consumer? You know what I'm saying? How does the cost of development affect me directly as a consumer? And what are you doing about it to justify that price tag? And that's just what I'm saying. It's just like, you have a dog in the race. Of course you want game prices to increase because it positively affects your salary, or your bonus. Because typically developers and all them, I mean, of course he gets a salary, but typically developers get a much higher bonus depending on the success of the game. So if the game is very successful, that's typically why, you know, people, I don't necessarily trust like, you know, reviewer scores from like Metacritic, and I'd look more at user scores, because, you know, we've learned previously that you get a increased bonus, like they get an increased bonus if the game is rated at like an 85 or 80 or whatever like that. We found that out through EA. They get bonuses, they get an increase in their bonus if that happens, and then they, you know, that bonus is then quantified by how many sales that game produced in the long run. So they don't typically get their bonus until the end of that type of like, until the end of that cycle happens. Once that cycle ends, then they get a big bonus at the end of that. And so he directly benefits from saying that, you know, the price of games we know he felt were too low. I'm just like, okay, then what new development are you using to craft these games then? Like, and how does that benefit the consumer as well? You know what I'm saying? I mean, yeah, you get an increase in graphics or whatever like that, but are we getting introduced to new technology? Which I'm not saying Dragon's Dogma doesn't do. There's a lot of things that I saw that in the gameplay trailer that Dragon's Dogma does that is very much so interesting. But that's kind of like the thing that's going on with Capcom, man, and Resident Evil and Dragon's Dogma and stuff like that. But moving on, we got some more information. So like separate category for remakes being considered by Game Awards now. So I had a discussion before in the previous video that me personally, I think there's nothing wrong with remakes being entered into game of the year because of development process. They have to rebuild the game from ground up. Yes, they may have a certain advantage of the fact that the world already exists. It's a pre-existing world and stuff like that, but they still have to recreate that world from the ground up on new hardware, on a new engine. So it's not like they can just pour everything over and increase the graphics and it doesn't work that way. You can't take a game that's like 20 years old at this point and then just put it in Unreal Engine 5 and then have it like brand new graphics and have it work with, new hardware. It doesn't work like that. They have to craft the entire world over again, as well as new gameplay mechanics, things like that, and have it function on new hardware. But the debate still kind of reigns on to this point. But they go on to say that with the nomination of Resident Evil 4 for Game of the Year, fans have argued remakes should not be considered for this award. On this note, Jeff Keighley suggests that he has considered a separate category for remakes and remasters. This was kind of like the middle ground that we kind of mentioned before, that people were kind of like hinting at before. Now they're actually taking this into serious consideration. But he goes on to say that, we talked about it, nothing new this year, but it's something we talk about every year. And in this article, they kind of explained that the major challenge of introducing such a category comes from the fact that the host would need at least 5 remakes/remasters worth being nominated every year. While 2023 has had the likes of Resident Evil 4, Dead Space, Metroid Prime, and more, this type of variety and quality is not seen for re-releases in the industry every year. Therefore, despite discussions, the Game Awards staff has not come to a conclusion on this subject yet. So, I mean, they're seriously considering it. They have to fit within the criteria. So you need at least 5 of them that are worth being nominated every year, and if you don't have 5 of them that are worth being nominated every year, then it kind of makes it like difficult to have that category, because we don't often get remakes like that much throughout the year, every year. Remakes, there's only like a very small amount of remakes that happen. Capcom is just leading the charge in that, with, Resident Evil, but we're also going to get some remakes from Konami coming up too as well. But, like that it's going to be hard to put those into categories with this particular set of criteria that they have. You need at least 5 of them, remakes and remasters. So I mean, like, it just depends. But yeah, I mean, my opinion, man, this whole debate is something that didn't even need to exist. If you understand development and you understand how, the difference between a remake, remaster, new IP, all that stuff like that, like the development is not easier because it's a remake. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can almost kind of throw a remake into the same category as a sequel, or not even really as a sequel to a game, because the remake has to be like crafted from the ground up again. Like, a sequel is something that's being just made on pre-existing, for as far as like, if it's not like a sequel that's been, far removed from the original one, you know what I'm saying? I'm not talking about like a sequel that's like 20 years apart, kind of like, or like, I'm not talking about like a sequel like Alan Wake, where the original Alan Wake was like what 13 years removed from the sequel. But I mean, like games like Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2, you know what I'm saying? Like those games are still built on the same engine. You know, and not a lot of development has to go into the sequel because the foundation's already built in the original game. So it's like, okay, so how do you feel about Game of the Year? Like if you're solely just basing it on like development and originality, because one of the arguments was that, oh, it cast a shadow on new IPs that for Game of the Year and all that stuff. And I'm just like, okay, but you don't have an issue with Spider-Man 2 being nominated Game of the Year. You know what I'm saying? You don't have nobody had a issue with The Witcher 3 being nominated and I think winning Game of the Year. You know what I'm saying? Like you like this whole argument just doesn't make any sense. So it's like, okay, so if you don't want remakes in there, what about sequels? Do you need a whole new category for sequels for Game of the Year? Because those also cast a shadow on new IP, as well as if you're looking at it from a development standpoint, the development should be a lot easier than recreating something from scratch, because you have a completely new engine that you have to develop for that game, which is what they did for Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2 had to be built on a brand new engine. Capcom built a brand new engine specifically for their new titles. After Resident Evil, I think Resident Evil 7 came out first on the RE engine, and then they started making all the remakes off of the RE engine. So it's like, you know, you pick your battles. What are you going to do? You know what I'm saying? And it's like, if you're just going to complain about every little minute detail that happens within the gaming industry and how they nominate games and stuff like that, then what are we actually doing? Are we just going to create a category for every damn thing? You know what I'm saying? Why even have a Game of the Year category? You know what I'm saying? At all, if you know, if it's just gonna be like it's not like the Game of the Year category is like, you know, Game of the Year for new IP category. You know what I'm saying? It's like that's not what that's for. It's for whatever game performed the best for that year. You know what I'm saying? Whatever game was popular, whatever game ended up being like a monumental change for that year is listed as Game of the Year. So it's just like having this entire argument and having this debate doesn't really make any sense. It's really, in my opinion, very much so stupid to even have this debate at all, because you have to make categories for every damn thing at that point if you're solely basing it on development and casting a shadow on new IP. It's stupid. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, no, I don't think I mean, like, of course you could try to make a category for remakes and have that be the middle ground to kind of make, just try to, that's an attempt to try to make everybody happy. My opinion, screw the other people that talking about like, Resident Evil 4 is nominated for Game of the Year and this is a remake. And it was popular. So it's a popular game that people like. It's an iconic title that, you know what I'm saying, that was recreated for audiences for old audiences and new people, for people who probably weren't born during the time that Resident Evil 4 came out and didn't play the original. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that whole entire argument is stupid. It doesn't make any sense. But you know, that's just my 2 cents on that, man. It's just ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I think, in my opinion, just let it be, known that Resident Evil 4 is nominated for Game of the Year. Not saying that the game is going to win Game of the Year. This shit is just nominated. Like, you crying over some shit that's nominated, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like it was like you motherfuckers getting upset about a game that's just nominated. And it's one of 5 games that's nominated. It's not even a game that, it has the potential to win, but it doesn't mean that it will win. There's 4 other games in that category. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, calm down. Just calm down a little bit. The Game Awards ain't even here yet, and you already bitching. You just bitching about stuff that don't make sense. But moving on, though. I have some more information. Speaking of bitching, Bethesda's responding to negative reviews of Starfield on Steam. This was hilarious when I first saw this. I'm like, why in the hell? See, it goes back to what I said before in my previous video that developers just sometimes just need to shut up. Don't say shit. Do what you were paid to do and just develop games. Let the people who are in charge of community or whatever like that handle that part of the company. You out here being a developer saying shit, and all thing you're doing is just making the company look bad, making the company look worse. And the funny thing about this is that another developer flagged the tweet, which is funny. So as spotted by Project Zomboid developer Andy Hodgetts and flagged in a tweet, representatives of the Microsoft-owned company have been replying to negative reviews on Valve's platform since November, and amid Starfield's mixed user review rating of 69%. Many of the negative reviews echo common complaints with a spawning space game like this one, posted on November 6th from a player with 56 hours of Starfield. I've been playing Starfield, and I've given my thoughts on Starfield multiple times. But he goes on to say that boring and overrated. There's a wide universe to explore filled mostly with empty planets. I understand they have to do that to sell you on the idea that this is a whole universe, but that doesn't make the game more fun. You can land on any planet and explore the copy/pasted locations. You will see the exact same locations from one end of the universe to the other and everywhere in between. A hodgepodge of messy, slapped together mechanics, bloated skill trees, exploring, crafting, base building, an RPG, an FPS, a space opera. Starfield doesn't know what it wants to be. As wide as the ocean and as deep as a puddle. You can explore everywhere, but why would you want to? This goes back to what I said before. Bigger is not always better. And their whole marketing was behind, 1,000 planets. Open, it's an open universe. You can explore and do all that shit. I was like, that shit means nothing if A, you're using procedural generation to craft these planets. So that means it's going to be highly repetitive. And B, only 10% of the planets only 10% of the 1,000 are unique in nature. You don't even need the other 900. It's bloat. You're purposefully adding bloat to the game. If you don't know how to make 100 planets feel expansive, that's on you as a development studio. That has nothing to do with, and I'm gonna continue because I'm gonna go on a rant, and it just gets me back into the whole thing, and people just defending this nonsense. But they go on to say that this review sparked a response from someone called Bethesda Kraken developer who signed off their post as coming from Bethesda customer support. Greetings. Thank you for taking the time to leave a review for Starfield. We are sorry that you do not like landing on different planets and are finding many of them empty. Some of Starfield's planets are meant to be empty by design. What? Oh boy, but that's not boring. Who are you to tell somebody what's boring and what's not boring? See, this is the shit I'm talking about when I say developers just need to shut up. So sometimes you don't need to say shit. You don't need to say anything sometimes. Just be quiet. You don't have to respond to nothing. And it's just like it doesn't make any sense. You're only making yourself look worse. That is all. When the astronauts went to the moon, there was nothing there. They certainly weren't bored. How do you know they weren't bored or not? You're conflating and integrating a realistic point in time that only affected a small number of people in that moment, and you're assuming what their feelings were at that time, as well as conflating it with a fictional game and somebody else's feelings towards your game. What kind of crazy do you have to be to even make this point? Like, that's such a reach. That's such a reach to even try to make that point and try to justify that. The shit is beyond me. It doesn't make any sense. And I'm just like, this is clown world shit. This is something that just I don't understand why you would even say this. I don't know. The intention of Star Wars, Jesus Christ. The intention of Starfield's exploration is to evoke a feeling of smallness in players and make you feel overwhelmed. You can do that with 100 planets. You can do that with 20 planets. You don't need a number on how to make a game feel to someone. You know what I'm saying? That's why I keep going back to Red Dead Redemption 2. That game is very much so wide, and you only take place in one location. Because they know how to make their game. Rockstar knows how to make their games feel expansive. Baldur's Gate or Larian Studios knows how to make their games expansive. They don't have to make 1,000 planets to make you feel like this world has a lot more to offer outside of just a number. You know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous. And it really shows that you need a specific type of mindset to be a developer on some of these video games and at some of these studios. You need to have a specific type of mindset in order to develop a game in the first place. And for you to just think that just putting a number on how expansive a game can be is very much so small-minded. It's ironic that you think that the higher the number, the more expansive it will be when it's multifaceted. There's so much more other factors that go into that to make a game feel more expansive. And it's not based on a number. You don't have to make 1,000 planets to make a game feel expansive. You can have 5 planets and it can feel expansive. You know what I'm saying? The point is that you don't like the feedback that was given to your idea. That's it. You don't like the feedback that was given to your idea, and so you take it with, almost kind of like, oh, you don't really know what you're talking about. It's not boring. Like, are you like just denial? Crazy. So says that you can continue to explore and find worlds that do have resources or need or hidden outposts to look through. And it's just like, that's not refuting what the original comment said at all. Like, he says because of that, it's boring. Once you do it once, you don't want to do it anymore. And that tells more about the actual quests versus the number of quests. See, you're getting lost in the number. You're getting lost in 1,000 planets versus 100 unique planets. You're getting lost in thousands of quests or hundreds of quests instead of a few really expansive quests. This is why I always say, in my opinion, Mass Effect had the best quests in any game that I can think of outside of like Baldur's Gate. You know what I'm saying? Like, Baldur's Gate kind of recreates that too, where it's like you take on a quest and then or Cyberpunk does it too, where you take on a quest and then that quest that you've been investigating it's almost like you're going down a rabbit hole of that, but you're only on that one quest, and you start learning about the world or the characters and stuff like that. Starfield doesn't have that most of the time. It has it sometimes with the main quest, but it's like, that's not like, this game is not that good. You know what I'm saying? For good reason. And you simply just think it's a numbers game. And that's the problem. And I mean, there's a whole host of other comments and stuff that they respond to that are asinine and crazy. I'll put the link to this article in the chat in the description. But yeah, I mean, you guys can take a look at it, man. This shit is wild. It's ridiculous altogether. But moving on though. We got some more information. Alan Wake 2 final draft update will introduce New Game Plus with narrative twist. Oh man, Alan Wake just keeps getting better. Of course, I knew New Game Plus was coming, but we get some new narrative twist with the update. I love that. So it's like, on top of that, you're getting 2 more expansions as well. So I'm gonna get into it. So they go on to say that the update will be called Final Draft and will make some changes to the game's narrative, including new manuscript pages to find and a new TV screen videos throughout the world, shedding a different light on some of the events taking place. Awesome. Like, see how you can expand on a game and you don't even have to add a whole new map. You don't even have to add a whole new map. You can do something so simple as adding TV screen videos throughout the world to expand upon the story, to create an entirely new experience for a gamer, for a consumer. You know what I'm saying? You can do that without even having to be like, oh, here we go. I'm going to add 100 more maps full of nothingness. And it's just like, well, this is boring. Well, it's not boring because the other person who jumped off, the bridge, he thought it was exciting. What the fuck? You know what I'm saying? Like, this shit just doesn't make any sense. The arguments are stupid. But thank you, Remedy, for making, awesome games, man. Like, I mean, Control, like, it's so crazy because it's like, I mean, I think Remedy has just had one terrible game from what I can think of. Everything else has been pretty damn good from what I can think. I think, what is it? I can't, Quantum something. I forget what it was called. I think that was the only poorly received game that they made. Even though it was graphically and technologically advanced. But they go on to say that following this update in 2024, we will see 2 DLCs for Alan Wake 2. One focused on Night Springs, a fictional TV series written by Alan Wake in this universe. And then the second DLC will take place to the Lake House, a mysterious government research facility, not unlike the oldest house from Control. We can expect Remedy to continue fleshing out its multiverse concept with these updates, along with future projects like Control. So yeah, if you didn't beat Alan Wake 2, that's kind of like a spoiler. It opens up for like multiverse. Like, it's crazy it's crazy how detailed and how they crafted this story. If anything, this is probably the best multiverse story that I've seen. Like, this is the best multiverse story I've seen. And granted, that's the bar is pretty low because Marvel just fucks up multiverse terrible. Disney just fucks up multiverse terrible. But, this is probably the best multiverse story that I've seen in a very long time. But man, congrats to Remedy. I'm definitely going to be, I think I bought the deluxe edition so I get the expansions. I think, even if I didn't, I'm still buying the expansions regardless. But yeah, man, I'm excited for Alan Wake. More Alan Wake, man. Give me more Alan Wake. Give me more Control. Give me a new IP based in the same universe. Give me all of that. I fleshed this universe out. Like, this is probably the best type of route that you could go to, is just like, you have a very interesting universe. You can create new IP within this universe. That's so awesome. Like, that's so dope to even think about. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think anyone else has kind of tried it this way before, as far as narrative driven games, like crafting an overarching universe and then developing beloved characters and different games and within this universe that are interesting and exciting and popular, as well as it gives you the playing field to introduce new IP and new stories, new games into this universe. Even so much so, it's they kind of almost put it out. They hinted almost damn near like Max Payne exists in this universe. You know what I'm saying? Because that would make sense if Max Payne existed in this universe, because he has the bullet time ability. Even just putting that, crafting that mechanic as something that's part of the story is dope. Cause it's like, hey, we've been studying this. Like, you could do like a Control 2 and mention like, hey, we've been studying this guy named Max, who has this ability to be able to slow down time and stuff like that. And it's just like, Max Payne could definitely exist in this universe with Alan Wake and the Control organization. Crazy. But loving it, man. I'm excited for this. I'm definitely going to play more Alan Wake 2, man. I'm amazing. It's amazing. I'm excited for Control 2. But moving on though, got some more information. Sega says Creative Assembly will return to genres it knows best after Hyena's cancellation. About time. I keep saying this before, and I said this with Redfall, with Arcane Studios, and I'll say it with this. Is like, stop putting developers in positions that their strengths are not, they don't excel at. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, if you want to make a specific type of game, then hire developers who have experience with that, but you taking people out of the element, which I guess you could look at it as a good thing, but I see it as a bad thing because it's not working. But they're going to say that developer Creative Assembly has suggested the game was canceled due to ambitious plans and high competition in the multiplayer shooter space. Yeah, that's not what some of the developers said. However, during a financial results briefing presentation held this month, Sega Sammy Holdings president and group CEO Satomi stated that the developer was working on a genre it didn't know well enough, resulting in the game's cancellation and a number of redundancies. I mean, I see that on you. I put that on you. Why are you putting developers on a genre of game that they're not, privy to as much? You know what I'm saying? They don't specialize in. That ain't the developer's fault. That's your fault. So they go on to say that each studio has its own strengths and weaknesses, but the favorable winds of early COVID-19, yeah, blame it on COVID for sure, fine, coupled with the strong performance of each title led us to adopt a strategy of accelerating more, even in areas where those studios have not tried yet for further growth. However, some studios did well and some did not. So we have decided to focus again on the strengths of each studio. To put it simply, Creative Assembly was good at offline games in the RTS genre, but they took on the challenge of developing Hyenas, an online game in the FPS genre. That's difficult to do. Not a lot of developers can do that, and it also goes to say too, is like, there could be changes within the studio to where like that team can't make a change like that, but they hire new people to kind of assist with that transition. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I kind of, for instance, like I just talked about the, Dave the Diver developers making Naquan and stuff. That's a completely different change. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I don't necessarily know what happened behind the scenes. I don't know what new developers they brought on to kind of help with that transition from a, indie type of, I consider Dave the Diver to be super indie, but an indie type of, fishing game, like fishing kind of like, business type of, I want to say it's like a hybrid. I'm not gonna say like a simulator or whatever like that, but essentially you just, if you know Dave the Diver, then you know what I'm talking about. You just go on the ground, catch fish, fight bosses or whatever, go back up, and then you run like a store on the surface. Going from that to a full-blown horror survival or zombie horror survival extraction game, which is it's not a shooter. It's very much so unique in nature. It's an extraction at the end of the day, but it's very much so stealth based. And they do it well. Granted, it's very rough around the edges. If you can actually get access, I don't know if you can get access by the time this video dropping. But I played a lot of it. It's very much so interesting. So I mean, that's not an easy thing to do in a transition. And a lot of the times it's not successful neither. But it's like, I know for a fact when you start making free to play games that are like, monetary prioritized first, or the monetization is prioritized first, it's going to fail regardless. But they go on to say that, however, although the game itself was good, we decided to cancel the development of Hyenas because we did not think it would reach a quality that would satisfy our users when we considered whether we could really operate this as a competitive online game for a long period of time. That's not what developers said. Now, I mean, you can make excuses, but at the bottom here, and this is what I talked about before, reports following the game's cancellation suggested that staff at Creative Assembly were unhappy with its development, with some sources claiming that a lack of direction, disruptive engine change, and overly cautious design contributed to its downfall. You had execs and administration putting their hands into the creative process, and that always messes up the development of a game, regardless of who you are. A lot of the times. And so let creators be creatives, man. Let developers develop. Let community leaders deal with the community developer. Just everybody has a role to play. People don't have these roles and get paid in these positions for nothing. That's not how that works. You're not a developer and also a community manager. Stop it. Just stop it. Play your role. Everybody has a role to play, But moving on though. Last little bit of news today, man, which is pretty big. PlayStation makes a deal with a huge company to expand beyond console. And this huge company is NC Soft, which, they've worked on, Lineage and Guild Wars. I'm not familiar with both of those. I'm familiar with Guild Wars, but I think they're also working on Throne and Liberty too, which I saw a gameplay of and I'm excited for, and I think I've actually signed up for like a play test, which I don't think I got in. But Sony said the two companies are now on evaluating a range of potential opportunities for strategic synergy. I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, why wouldn't you use a partnership? So SIE doesn't have a massive footprint in the mobile game space, and partnering with NC Soft for mobile projects would potentially be a way to do more. For its part, Microsoft has said one of the reasons it bought Activision Blizzard was to get into the mobile game market. Of course, it's a competitive move. It also makes sense too because, they did kind of reel back their live service plans, which is a good thing. But Sony has to figure out a way to make more money, of course, because they're a corporation. So it's like, live service was our initial plan, which is why we bought Bungie. But that wasn't well received. So we're going to reel that back, and then we're going to slide in this mobile game portion. So expect mobile versions of like your favorite exclusives, I would say. Like, maybe like a maybe like a bejeweled version of like Horizon, or like a card game or whatever like that. So I mean, expect stuff like that, but it's also kind of plays into like their cloud gaming as well. And of course, they're going to be putting more of that, on their their Sony phones, their Xperia phones. So you're going to have like, of course, like I think like the PlayStation app is well more integrated into the Xperia phones too as well. This could possibly open up some possibilities to be able to play like mobile versions of your games on your TV. Me personally, I have 2 Sony TVs. Just bought another one recently. And for me, I think they have the best interface out of any of the other TVs, in my opinion. They're more closely with phones than anything else. But I mean, yeah, this is not surprising though, man. But I mean, good on Sony. This is like, I guess the one good thing that Jim Ryan kind of like did, that and reeling back the live service. But other than that, he's run like PlayStation into the ground. We need to get his ass. I'm glad he's leaving. He's done so much terrible shit to Sony, and it's just taking a hit, and it's just, it's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. But, that's it for today, guys, man. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like the video. If you like the content, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to keep saying this. I'm going to keep saying it until you guys subscribe more. I like the new subscribers, man. I'm trying to build this community up to, foster a community of same opinions and differing opinions, similar opinions and differing opinions. You know what I'm saying? I like to have a conversation, and maybe we can grow this into something more. But you know what I'm saying? Subscribe to the channel, like the video, hit the bell for notifications, man. And I will see you guys next week. Take it easy.